So this essay won in 2019 with the question, are beliefs voluntary? And I'll leave a full link to the essay here. You can also read it on the John Locke website. And I'm going to go through how they answered the conclusion, or how they wrote an effective conclusion and an effective introduction. So I'll just give you a moment or two to read through the introduction. So there are a few things I've picked out, 8 things in fact, that I think make this introduction particularly strong and potentially contributed towards it being a winning essay. 1, as you can recall, the question was, are beliefs voluntary? And what the winning candidate has done is immediately defined the term belief in the first sentence of their introduction. They've cited the source from which they found the definition of belief, and they've correctly cited it in a citation format called APA, which we'll have a look at later. I think something else that makes this introduction strong is their use of a quote, which they've also cited with a source. They've introduced their argument clearly, so they say belief is an involuntary response to perception. And again, the question is, are beliefs voluntary? They are clearly answering the question in the introduction and stating their argument. They then go on in point number 6 here to set out their structure. So they basically set out a roadmap that helps the examiner to identify how exactly this student or this candidate is going to answer this question throughout the essay. And they do this by introducing the different themes that they're going to cover. So they introduce psychological, neurobiological, and sociological research findings that they are going to explore in the essay in order to answer the question and persuade the examiner that their argument is the correct one. And the final point I'd like to emphasize is the final sentence in which they state their argument again. Now, let's move on to how they write a good conclusion. Again, I'll give you a moment or two just to read it through. So, as you can see, it's a very brief conclusion. It's not going to go over, 100 or so words. And this is because the candidate has obviously argued very strongly in their main body paragraphs, which is the most important part. The conclusion doesn't need to be very long. It just needs to really be a sort of concluding paragraph where you restate your argument and you summarize your point in a persuasive way. Here are the things that I think make this conclusion particularly persuasive. 1, they've used a subheading. 2, they refer back to the exact wording of the question, in this case, voluntary. So are beliefs voluntary? And that just shows to the examiner that the student who has written this essay is completely focused on the question in hand. They use very persuasive language such as we instead of using I. So they say we conclude that belief must be an involuntary process, which is stronger. Instead of saying I conclude, they say we, which is obviously more persuasive and a little bit more professional and academic. They use strong linking phrases like furthermore in order to link their different points together. And they use further persuasive language such as substantiate the claim, which is sort of quite formal, and it gives the writer or the student that sort of air of authority, you could say. And my final point is they return to the question at the end and they clearly state their answer and argument to the essay question, are beliefs voluntary? They say that ultimately belief is involuntary. So it is very, very clear what this student or what this essay contestant has argued their case, and it is not leaving the examiner confused at all.